Hello everyone, it's time for the start seminar, International Advanced Training course on stakeholder engagement for recovery after nuclear disasters. We'd like to welcome you all and thank you for coming. This is hosted by Nagasaki University and also supported by the Fukushima Innovation Course Project. I'm Xu Xiao from Nagasaki University. The program is headed by Professor Jacques Loisha and Professor Noboru Takamura from the Atomic Bomb Disease Institute of Nagasaki University. Especially here, I'd like to introduce interpreters during this whole period. Assistant Professor Jinping Takahashi.
Hello. But today I am taking the day off because everyone speaks English.
Thank you. Okay, we will start the first session. The first speaker is Prof. Takamura from Nagasaki University. The title is Overview of the Recovery Process from FD and PP Accident. Prof. Takamura, please.
So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and our students. So, welcome to Fukushima. So, I'm very happy to accept all of you to Futaba town of Fukushima Prefecture. I'm Noboru Takamura. I'm professor of Atomic Bomb Disease Institute of Nagasaki University. And simultaneously, since 2020, I'm a director of the Great East Japan Earthquake and Nuclear Disaster Memorial Museum, just in front of this building. So on Thursday, you will visit our museum. Yeah. So my considered initial talk is about kind of the history of the Nagasaki University on the issue of the support of recovery process of Fukushima just after the accident in 2011. So everybody knows that in 1945, so atomic bomb has been dropped in Nagasaki City. As you may know, that our Nagasaki University School of Medicine is located 500 from the hypocenter. So due to this bombing, 70,000 citizens died. Then another 70,000 citizens became airborne survivors. Within the campus of Nagasaki Medical University, almost 900 teachers and students died. This slide shows the relationship distance from hypocenter and the exposure doses. You see that this yellow line is Nagasaki and red line is Hiroshima. As you see at the hypocenter, quite high, 350 sievert, the exposure doses. Then the dose is dramatically decreased due to the distance from hypocenter. Then around 2 kilometers, the exposure dose is around 100 millisievert in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Then at 4 kilometers from the hypocenter, the dose is around 0.05 millisievert, equivalent with thin chest X1. Since the beginning of 1950s, the prospective cohort study has been implemented in Hiroshima and Nagasaki to clarify the health effect due to the radiation exposure. So this is the summary. This slide shows the relationship between the doses and excess relative risk of solid cancer in airborne survivors. As you may know, that the positive linear relationship between the doses and excess relative risk of cancer observed in airborne survivors. On the other hand, currently in Fukushima, the health effect in the low dose range is one of the concerns in the residents of Fukushima. So this slide shows also the results of the prospect cohort study in airborne survivors with relatively lower dose ranges. As you know, that at 100 millisievert, the excess risk of excess death risk due to the cancer is around 0.5%. But you know that the less than 100 millisievert, the risk, this risk of the cancer is too small to observe. So this is the scientific evidence obtained from the PROCEPT study of airborne survivors. To rescue the airborne survivors, and then also to clarify the mechanism of the radiation-induced diseases, especially the radiation-induced cancer and the leukemia, Atomic Bomb Disease Institute was established in Nagasaki University. And already 60 years, or more than 60 years ago, this Atomic Bomb Disease Institute. And then we have concentrated on the research targeted to the airborne survivors to clarify the mechanism of the radiation-induced diseases. And then, since the beginning of 1990s, so our institute started the medical assistant to the victims around Chernobyl nuclear power plant. You know that the accident itself occurred in 1986. Then we started such a medical cooperation since the beginning of 1990s. So this is the contamination map of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Then, as you see, according to the weather condition and the wind direction, so radionuclides, mainly radioiodine and radiocesium, distributed around the nuclear power plant, especially at the time of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The radionuclides were widely distributed to the Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine. Then also, at the time of the accident at Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, mainly the radionuclides were split into ocean, Pacific Ocean side, but nevertheless, sometime due to the change in the wind direction, the contamination split into these areas, including Futaba town here, and then also the Namie town, next town. So this is a comparison of the contamination scale between the Chernobyl and Fukushima. So compare with the Fukushima widely contaminated by the Chernobyl accident. So as you see that this is a comparison of the radionuclide released by both accidents. By the Chernobyl accident, as you know, that is almost 7 times larger radionuclide were released compared with the Fukushima nuclear power plant accident. But you know that the types of these radionuclides were quite similar between both accidents. That means that the radionuclides, radioiodine, especially the iodine-131 released, and then also the radiocesium such as cesium-134 and cesium-137 were released into the environment. You know that due to the nuclear accident at Chernobyl, radioiodine were released into the environment and it transferred into the water in the plant and then transferred into the plants and the animals, especially cow. And then once the human, especially the children, drank the contaminated cow milk by iodine-131, so they receive the internal radiation exposure to, especially to the thyroid gland, which caused the childhood thyroid cancer several years after the accident. At the time of the Chernobyl accident, the food regulation policy has not been implemented, which caused the internal radiation exposure to the thyroid gland by iodine-131, especially in children. So this slide shows the relationship between iodine-131 thyroid doses and the relative risk of thyroid cancer. You see that positive linear relationship between the thyroid doses and cancer observed in around Chernobyl, especially among the evacuees in Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. So the absorbed thyroid dose were more than 200 millisievert to 500 millisievert. As I mentioned, since the beginning of 1990s, Nagasaki University participated in the Chernobyl Sasagawa Health and Medical Corporation project. So within the framework of this project, that we introduced the bus, including the thyroid ultrasonography and the whole body counter. So we donated 5 such screening buses to each center around Chernobyl nuclear power plant: Gomel and Mogilov in Belarus, and Bryansk in Russian Federation, and Kiev and Zhytomyr in Ukraine. And then we screened the school children who were 0 to 18 years old at the time of the accident. And then once the nodule was observed by ultrasound, so 5-needle aspiration biopsy was implemented, and then final diagnosis were implemented by the cytological evaluation. Also, the internal body burden by cesium-137 were evaluated by whole body counter. From 1991 to 1996, almost 120,000 children were examined. Then this is a result. As you see, the younger age at the time of the accident has higher risk of thyroid cancer, especially 0 to 5 years at the time of the accident. On the other hand, so we visited a lot to the around Chernobyl nuclear power plant and noticed that no municipality returned. And then same as the Fukushima accident. So the residents within 30 kilometers from the nuclear power plant evacuated immediately after the accident. But no municipality recovered. So this is not only the radiological issues, but also other social issues, such as it will be difficult to re-establishment of infrastructure, industry, agriculture, or social network, and so on. So that was the one of the most important lessons we obtained from the Chernobyl accident. So in 2011, 12 years ago, accident at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant occurred. So as you know, that due to this accident, so Unit 1, 3, and 4 had hydrogen explosion. And then due to this hydrogen explosion and vent operation, the huge amount of radionuclide is also released into the environment. Again, this slide. So compared with the Chernobyl accident, the total amount of the released radionuclide was very, very limited, but types of the radionuclide were similar between both accidents. So this is the distribution of ambient dose point within 80 kilometer zone from the nuclear power plant. As I mentioned, so mainly the radionuclide was distributed, released to the ocean side, Pacific Ocean side. But sometimes the wind direction changed and the radionuclides were released into this direction. By the way, so this building is located 4 kilometers from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Then currently, the ambient dose decreased due to the contamination, decontamination, and also the half decay of radiocesium. So this slide shows the changes in the ambient doses just after the accident. So due to such an open vent and hydrogen explosion, ambient dose elevated. For example, in Iitate village, the ambient dose reached up to 45 microsieverts per hour, and then decreased due to the relatively short half decay of I-9131. Then, due to this accident, evacuation orders were issued within 20 kilometer zone from the nuclear power plant. So you will see such an actual situation of evacuation at the museum. But as you see that until the next day of the earthquake, the residents within 20-kilometer zone were issued to evacuate. And due to this evacuation policy, almost 110,000 residents evacuated from their hometown. So this is the evacuation route of each municipality. For example, here, Futaba town. So residents firstly evacuated to Kawamata town, and then evacuated to Saitama prefecture, outside Fukushima prefecture. And then next town, Okuma town, evacuated Tamura town, Tamura city, and then Aizu Wakaman city. So many of the residents experienced such a repeated evacuation, which causes social confusion. But nevertheless, it was necessary to minimize the external exposure doses. So this is the result of the Fukushima Health Management Survey. Within the framework of this survey, so evaluation, external radiation exposure doses were estimated. Then you see that almost all resident external doses is less than 3 millisievert, and the average is almost 0.8 millisievert. So external doses is relatively limited. And then also to minimize the internal radiation exposure based on the lessons of Chernobyl accident, the Japanese government initiated food regulation policy to minimize the internal radiation exposure, and all contaminated cow milk was disposed of. So exactly again this slide. So to minimize the internal radiation exposure through the consumption of the contaminated foods by iodine 131, the food regulation was implemented to prevent the childhood side cancer due to the internal radiation exposure. And this slide shows the comparison of the size of the exposure doses between Chernobyl and Fukushima. As I mentioned, so especially in the evacuees of Belarus and Russia and Ukraine, so thyroid dose is quite high, such as sometimes more than 1,000 millisievert. But so far in Fukushima, it is estimated or directly measured that the thyroid doses in children was relatively limited due to the prompt evacuation and also the food regulation. So again, this slide, compared to the Chernobyl accident, the dose of the dose in the resident of Fukushima is estimated to be very limited. So that's why so many experts stated that the health or the international organization reported that the health risk in the resident of Fukushima will not be observed. But nevertheless, so this is the change in the risk perception about genetic effect in Fukushima. You see that in 2011, almost 60% of the residents believe that the genetic effects would occur in future Fukushima. And then the rate of such resident is decreasing. But on the other hand, for example, in the Tokyo metropolitan, still almost 30% of residents believe that such a genetic effect will occur in future Fukushima. Such a kind of the gap between the actual doses and the risk perception is one of the very serious issue in Fukushima and in Japan. Another issue is this is a change of the body mass index in Fukushima prefecture. So before the accident, the rate of the obesity in men is around 30%. But after the accident, the rate increased up to 40%. But you know, the radiation never caused obesity. But the long-term evacuation after the nuclear disaster can cause this kind of increase in the obesity. This is the typical indirect effect of the nuclear disaster. Just after the accident, Nagasaki University decided to dispatch the experts of the experts on the management of acute radiation syndrome. The doctors and the nurses, dispatched to Fukushima Medical University and participated in the team of the acute radiation syndrome management. And also, I and Professor Shunichi Yamashita went to Fukushima just 1 week after the accident to manage to implement the crisis communication, because at the time of the accident, so people of the Fukushima prefecture that did not know about radiation at all, which caused social panic. So that's why we decided to implement the crisis communication. And this is a picture of the first crisis communication held in the Fukushima Medical University. And we noticed that even the medical doctor and medical staff, they do not have enough knowledge about the radiation health, radiation exposure and its health. Of course, they know about the radiation diagnosis, treatment, but they do not have enough information about radiation health after the exposure. So that's why, so on March 19 March 2011, we became the advisor on radiation health risk control of the Fukushima prefecture to implement the crisis communication. It's the first experiences. One of the first experience of the crisis communication after a nuclear disaster. Because at the time of the Chernobyl accident, no such crisis communication was implemented. So this is the pictures of crisis communication in Fukushima. You notice that we talk about such a radiation exposure and its health without any slide, without any paper materials, because we could not prepare. We did not have any equipment for the slide. So we explained about such a radiation without only the mic and hand. And then usually we explain about 45 minutes and then accepted the questions from the audience. And surprisingly, many audience ask a question. Sometimes it continues more than 90 minutes, sometimes up to 2 hours. So many have a question, and then after such a communication, some of the audience make this kind of line, and then ask a question, like a personal question. For example, I have a daughter and she is now pregnant. And can she deliver the baby in Fukushima or something like that? Such a private question continue. And then finally, we shake hands. Okay, I believe you. So maybe shake a hand. Okay, something like that. So such kind of the crisis communication continue 1 to 2 months after the accident. So this is a question from in the initial phase. Should we escape from Fukushima immediately? Or can my daughter have a baby in Fukushima? Or can we drink a tap water or something like that? And then after the termination of the crisis phases, so we, Nagasaki University, focused on the recovery support of the community after a nuclear disaster, especially the communities, town and municipality for which experienced the evacuation from their hometown. So currently we have the agreement with Kawaguchi Village, Tomioka Town, Okuma Town, and here Futaba Town. Then we established a satellite office in each town. And for example, several doctors are working at these satellite offices. So at first we started the recovery support of Kawaguchi Village, which located within 30-kilometer zone. After the nuclear power plant, firstly they accepted the evacuees from Tomioka Town, but due to the difficulty to manage their life because no supplies. After the accident, there are no supplies from outside. So that's why they decided to evacuate to Koriyama Town. But as you see, that ambient dose rate in Kawachi village is relatively lower compared with other municipalities within 30 km zone due to the wind direction in the initial phase. So that's why Kawachi village decided to return back to their hometown after the termination of the nuclear disaster. So village mayor Mr. Endo, he will deliver the lecture in this week. So he decided, he stated to return back to their hometown. They relocate the function of the village office to the hometown. And then they started the decontamination to remove the radiocesium through the removal of the surface of the garden, ground, and wash the roof or wall of the houses. So this is the decontamination of the residential houses. And then also they re-establish the infrastructure such as the convenience store and factory, and also restarted the agriculture. So this is the rate of residents returning to Kawachi village up to 1 year after starting the return, May 2013. The rate of return is around 50%. But you see that the younger generation, the rate of return is relatively low. So of course, there are several factors such as educational issue of the children, occupational issue of the mother and father, but also the anxiety to the radiation effect, especially to the children, is one of the factors which affect their decision not to return. So as I mentioned, we established a satellite office in Kawachi village, and then Dr. Makiko Orita, she is now currently working in this Futaba town. She lived in Kawachi village more than 3 years, and then implemented such a risk communication with the residents for 3 through the evaluation of the external and internal exposure doses of residents, and then she implemented the risk communication based on the result or the measurement in each resident, each community. So she visited the residential house, and then based on the measurement result, she implemented the risk communication sometime one by one. And then also she participated in the meeting between the officer of the village office and the resident. Residents sometimes ask about such a recovery of the infrastructure. To such questions, the officer answers. But if the resident asks about the radiation, so in this case, Dr. Orita answered. Because several years after the accident, no resident have the anxiety only to the radiation. They have such a various such topics to have anxiety. So that's why this kind of the meeting was very important for the resident. After the accident, probably you will visit in this week. So food monitoring center was launched in each community. So, and then resident can bring the agricultural product in their field, and then can measure the concentration of the radiocesium. And then according to the experience of the Chernobyl accident, it has been well known that the radiocesium is concentrated into mushroom. But on the other hand, Kawachi village is very famous for mushroom. So mushroom, collecting and eating mushroom is a kind of the culture of this community. So residents have anxiety to continue such kind of the culture. So we decided to implement a kind of the collaboration study between the experts and residents. Residents collected the mushroom, and then we measured the concentration of the radiocesium, and then prepared this kind of the mushroom map. So at first, residents hesitated to give the information for collecting stock because it's a kind of a secret for each resident. But nevertheless, we continue this kind of project even now. And then based on the result, we are regularly organize this kind of the meeting with the resident. The important thing is, as I mentioned, we are the experts of radiation, but we are not the experts of mushroom. And the resident may not be experts of radiation, but they are definitely the experts of mushroom. So it is very important to communicate with each other based on each background. So fortunately, up to 2017, the rate of return of Kawachi Village reached up to 80%, one of the successful model of the recovery of the community after a nuclear disaster. This is the picture of the revitalization of the Kawachi Village last year. So Kawachi Village established a new elementary and junior high school to accept more children who return back to their hometown or even the newcomers. And then also they established a new Kawaguchi winery to produce some wine. So since last year they started producing the white wine, and this year they firstly produced the red wine. So please try if you have a chance. By the way, so in this building, on the ground floor, there is a small shop. Then in the shop, you can buy the Kawaguchi wine. But on the other hand, so Kawaguchi actually, the 80% of residents return back. But on the other hand, Tomioka Town next to Kawaguchi, the rate of the return is up to 50%, 15%. And then Okuma Town, the population is 10,000, but only 500 residents return back. And then this Futaba Town, just last month, the part of the evacuation order has been lifted. Currently, only 20 to 30 residents return back. That means that after 12 years after the accident, there is a gap of the recovery process in each municipality. This is the legal situation of Fukushima. Furthermore, this Futaba Town has another issue. So just next to this building, the interlink storage facility for removed soil and waste is launched between both Futaba Town and Okuma Town. So until 2045, such kind of waste are reserved in this area. So, according to the situation of the recovery process, we need to support each municipality's recovery efforts. For example, Tomioka Town, the rate of the return is around 15%. So this is the study of Dr. Matsunaga, and this is the comparison of the intentional return in each generation. Compare with the older male, the intentional return of a younger female is almost 25%. On the other hand, anxiety to eat produced in Tomioka or anxiety to drink water in Tomioka, the younger female has higher anxiety. And also they have higher anxiety for health in themselves, in children, and offspring. So these kind of so-called mother's generation approach to the certain mothers or future mothers is very, very important for the effective risk communication. That's why in Tomioka Town and also another town, we are doing the risk communication with young mother and pregnant mothers. This is very important for the future recovery of the community. Also, we are approaching to the future mother and father. This is a picture of the risk communication with high school students in Fukushima. So, from time to time, we organize this kind of risk communication with the high school students, and then we have lectures to them. And also, the staff member of the municipality office, this communication to them is also very important because already 12 years has passed. Many of the staff have no experience to work in their hometown. Actually, almost 30 or 40% of the staff of Futaba Town has no experience to work at Futaba Town. This is the situation. That's why. And then furthermore, so such kind of approach is very important. Furthermore, this is the comparison of the risk perception of the resident who already returned or decided to return and undecided not to return. As you see, that the residents who have not decided to return back, they have a higher anxiety to consuming the locally produced food, and then the anxiety to be cancer by living in Tomioka or the genetic effect in the next generation. Furthermore, in this group, the higher prevalence of the PTSD or depression observed. That means that the approach of the resident who cannot decide to return or not is also very important. So we organize this kind of the group meeting, the residents who still continue to evacuate outside the hometown. And then we have this kind of the risk communication opportunity. And then also sometimes we organize kind of the bus tour to Tomioka for them so that they could know the current situation of Tomioka, including the doses, ambient doses, and then the new facilities, for example, the food monitoring center and so on. So this is very important to provide information so that they can make a final decision by themselves. Also, as I mentioned, many of the officers in Futaba and Okuma, they have no experiences to work at their hometown, and then they wish to intention to participate in the seminar of experts about radiation. So also we organize this kind of risk communication with young staff of local town office. This is very important so that they could understand what we are doing and what we are thinking. And which is very important to make a trust between the experts and the staff of the local municipality, which easily implement for the easy implementation of the risk communication with the residents. Also, such kind of the capacity building is not only for Japanese, but also the foreign students is very important because complex disaster, including the tsunami, earthquake, and nuclear disaster, this is only the experience in Fukushima. So that's why it is very important to know the recovery process from such a complex disaster, not only to the Japanese students, but also foreign students. So this time we organize this kind of the training course for mainly to the foreign students to know such an importance of the for the process of the recovery process from a complex disaster and the importance of the contribution of experts for recovery. So this is a picture of training course for Ukrainian students who evacuated to Nagasaki University. Currently, our university accepts more than 20 Ukrainian students who evacuated from their mother country. Then, for them, also, it is very important to know the recovery after the disaster. Of course, Ukraine experienced not only disaster but also the war, but nevertheless invasion. But nevertheless, for them, it is very important to know the recovery process of the community. So that's why if we invited them, then they visited the museum to know the recovery process. Then also they visited the residential houses who contributed to the recovery of the community. So, as a director of the museum, I just briefly introduce our museum. So our the Great East Japan Earthquake and Nuclear Disaster Memorial Museum was opened in September 2022, 2 years ago. And then I became the first director of this museum. And then since the opening of the museum, more than 150,000 visitors visited our museum. So this is Japanese Kyoku Tsunagu Mirai. So memory should succeed to the future. So our such experiences of memory after a nuclear conflict should transmit to the future for the preparedness for future unexpected disasters, including the conflict disaster, not only in Japan, but also over the world. So this is my last slide. Already almost 12 years has passed since the accident. So as I mentioned, the recovery process is different in each local community. So during this week, you will see such kind of the difference of the recovery process in each municipality. So for the recovery of the community from a nuclear disaster, it means cooperation between residents, authorities, and experts are essentially needed in current for the recovery of the community by a complex disaster, including nuclear disaster. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Prof. Takamura. Now, let's open a question and comments time. Is anyone have any questions want to ask?
Yeah, Thierry Schneider from France. Thank you for this very good overview and very rich in terms of different action. I have one question. You mentioned just after the accident, during the communication you had with large public, that it was difficult, you had no material, no equipment. What could be the development or the lessons that you have or recommendation for the future in case of improving or facilitating the discussion with the large public? Then we understand that you have the co-expertise process and open dialogue with directly in the satellite office, but when you are confronted to large public, what could be done?
Thank you very much. About the crisis communication, so we decided several topics should be talk. For example, the difference of radiation and radioactivity, difference of shield and nuclear, and then difference of the internal radiation exposure and the external radiation exposure. And then, for example, about radio sensitivity, something like that. So we decided almost 5 points, 5 topics should be included in the crisis communication. And then we talked about 45 minutes around that. Such kind of the preparation of the topic is important at first, I think. And also, we need to prepare the scenario of the predicted accident situation. For example, because when I implement crisis communication, the question raised from the audience is similar in every places. For example, many of them have a health effect to the baby or children, but many of them have an anxiety of the water society, water safety, something like that. So we can predict such a frequent asked questions. So we need to prepare such kind of the question list, each predicted question list. And then also we need to think about the media to use. At the time of the Fukushima accident, it was very used to the television because many evacuees could not watch the TV because they evacuated to the public hall and so on. So we have to think about the channel or alternative channel to distribute the information. At the time of accident, radio was available because even without television, so some evacuees had the radio, and they could hear our communication, the flash communication. So that's why we need to prepare the kind of the channel to distribute our information and also alternative channel.
Anyone?
Yeah, Uwe Scholz from Vienna, the IAA, and yeah, thanks a lot for your excellent presentation. But Professor Takamura, one thing, 10 years, 11 years after, or 12 years after, is when you do all these studies in this community, do you see, let's say, some economic effects? Because you mentioned before social influences, infrastructure influences right after the disaster. But can you dissect this? What makes people come back? Is maybe economy one cause of this? Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very important question, but I'm not an economist, so that's why I cannot fully answer about this question. But of course, no? So as I mentioned, the resident, anxiety of the resident is not only the radiation, but also the economy or education or the establishment of community and so on and so on. So that's why, as I mentioned, so the cooperation between the local authorities and experts definitely needed. Of course, after a nuclear disaster, so national government fully supported, financially supported to each affected area. For example, the museum was built by the national budget. This center is also fully supported by the national government. Such kind of re-establishment of the infrastructure is fully supported by the central government. But nevertheless, so not only the financial support or economical support is not enough for the recovery of the society. Re-establishing community is very important. That means that I feel that the kind of the leadership in each area is definitely needed. Not only the political area, but also the economical area and also the agricultural area. You will visit you will have a lecture from the Mr. Yuko Endo, the village mayor of Kawachi village, and he will talk about such a recovery process of the community Kawachi village. Then probably you can hear from him what's the importance of the leadership of each area for the recovery of the recovery of the community after disaster.
Thanks, Professor Nakamura, for the nice presentation, Takamura. You mentioned that the schools, primary and elementary schools, started in April 2021. And I'm wondering where the students were going before that, the Kawachi village students, and how is the enrollment after they restarted the school, whether the parents are sending students into these schools or they're still sending outside Kawachi village.
Okay, thank you very much. So this new school is a kind of merge of the elementary school and the junior high school of Kawachi. Just after the return in 2012, the Kawachi village reopened the elementary school and junior high school, and then these were merged in 2021. But I'll say that again, such an educational issue is one of the most important for the recovery of the community, because with no education, no children. So in Kawachi, there is elementary school and junior high school, but no high school. Before the accident, many of the high school students from Kawachi went to Tomioka's high school, but Tomioka town was closed until 2017. So that is one of the reasons that the younger generation cannot return back. So that's why, so re-establishment or the improvement of the educational environment is very important for the recovery of the community. Currently, Futaba town has just lifted the evacuation order, but there is no school. Next, in April, Oguma town finally re-established the school so that the acceleration of the return of younger generation. Such educational issue is very, very important for the recovery of the infrastructure as we pointed out.
Professor Kamura, thank you for the lecture. So I noticed that Nagasaki University was in charge of crisis communication for 4 towns, but for the remaining towns, who did the crisis communication? Was it like a single body or was it different people? And was there some sort of consensus decided before the crisis communication between these different bodies? And do you think this contributed to the social confusion among the evacuees?
Okay, so as you pointed out, Nagasaki University now supported the 4 towns, Kaochi, Tomioka, and then Okuma and Futaba. For example, Namie town, where you will stay tonight. So another university, Hirosaki University, is supporting. I'm not sure about the current situation of other localities. For example, Kawamata town is supported by Kinki University. Kinki is in the Osaka prefecture. But of course, there are several municipalities that has no such an official relationship between the university. But nevertheless, a part of the contribution, part of the support from experts, including university, is done in each committee. But such kind of official official compilation is mainly Nagasaki University, and then Hirosaki University, and then partially Kinki University.
Is anyone want to ask?
Thank you very much, Nakwa Sensei, for a great presentation. I'm wondering, you spoke mainly about the impact of your work locally, which of course is the focus of what you're doing, but do you have some idea of how your work affected Japan outside Fukushima Prefecture, maybe on perceptions of what's going on or in other ways?
Actually, we as Nagasaki University does not implement such a risk perception outside Fukushima. But other, for example, the Dentsu, one of the biggest companies, implement such a the comparison of the risk communication in Japan, include Tokyo Metropolitan and other prefecture. And as I mentioned, so for example, in Tokyo Metropolitan, still 30% of the residents believe that the future genetic effect, future Fukushima. So you see that 12 years has passed since the accident. The many of the people living outside Fukushima feels something like the Fukushima accident, it's already finished things. So such a concern to the Fukushima is now decreasing. So that's why. So their risk perception does not change since the initial part of the accident. So that's why, personally, I think that education is very important. So education not only in Fukushima but also in Japan, such a education about such a risk is very important for future Fukushima, not to return such a gap of the recognition, risk perception after accident. Actually, so Japanese government mixed history education started to provide the basic knowledge on the radiation to the elementary school, junior high school, and high school. Just started.
May I ask a question? Sorry, Professor Jacques. Can I ask a question? And then go to it. Okay. So yeah, Takamura Sensei, thank you so much for your presentation. Excellent one. Really enjoyed it very much. So as we learned, like studying here in Nagasaki, and I'm one of the international students from Belarus. We're studying here on a course of radiation and disaster management sciences, and as we learned here, like the process of revitalization and the process of accident management is always like ongoing process. So of course your presentation not giving us an final impression of how it actually ends, but it's like a continuous project. So the last slide should be to be continuous. And I want to ask you a question. So in your opinion, of course, you were present from the first day until now, and without it goes without saying that you will continue to help and support these territories as long as you can. So what is the main problems and unresolved issues on these territories that you consider the most important to be successfully resolved as the next steps? Because in your presentation you mentioned that only successes, on the good side. Of course, as a presenter you want to show your success, but how about the toughest points of all this process? Thank you very much.
That's the point you will learn during this week. And anyway, so it's a good question. So actually, 12 years have passed, but you should remember that still almost 30,000 residents cannot return up to their hometown. This is the real situation in Fukushima. And also, decommission process is still going on. It will take more 30 to 40 years. And then furthermore, as I pointed out, so there is the quite large interim storage facilities were launched between in Okuma town and Futaba town. That means until 2045, the residents who offer their territory for such a storage facility cannot return. So this is the situation. So that's why we cannot predict such a complete end, complete finish of this accident yet. So maybe you will see during this week.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to your question, Chris, because this is a very important one. I mean, I don't know how influential has been Nagasaki University beyond the prefecture and, of course, abroad. But this is true that there is a strong effort of diffusion of the experience. And, this is now what is the focus for Nagasaki, who has been at the center of the process, is to diffuse this experience. And of course, the training course today is there in this perspective. But there is also publication. There is participation to some international conferences. You know that the experience is well in place in publication 146 of ICRP. So I think this is now a part of the duty of the Nagasaki people to diffuse their experience. Of course, to listen also maybe some criticisms and good ideas, but nevertheless, what has been done here is totally unique, and this is very important to diffuse it.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, thank you for all good questions. Because of the time limitations, we needed to close these sessions and start the next one.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and we will watch 20 minutes videos of Kawauchi about the after great disasters and another 20 minutes videos of Tomioka after great disasters.